On this Sunday night, a one-vote victory flips a seat. The Liberal candidate in Terrebonne, Quebec, wins by a thread in a judicial recount.
It feels amazing, and I'm just ready to get to work, actually.
What it could mean for the House of Commons going forward. Face-to-face, the Ukrainian president agrees to meet with the Russian president for peace talks in Turkey. But will Putin show up?
L'immane tragedia della Seconda Guerra Mondiale.
The new Pope's first Sunday blessing and a call for an end to all wars. And leaving home.
I just don't want to spend the rest of my life in a country that's going backwards.
One U.S. couple's decision to move to Canada and why they aren't alone.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Colleen Christie.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. If you ever thought your vote doesn't make a difference, proof tonight it most certainly does. Ahead of Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, unveiling his new cabinet Tuesday, the Liberals just won a razor-thin judicial recount in the Montreal area riding of Terrebonne, inching the Liberals closer to a majority government. The riding flipped from the Bloc Québécois to the Liberals with just one vote, tipping the scales. And with three other federal ridings waiting on recounts, the dynamics in Parliament are still in flux. Touria Izri has our top story tonight.
I was just shocked.
An emotional whirlwind and whiplash for the Liberals' newest MP.
It still feels a little bit surreal. It feels great, though, to have the confidence of the people of Terrebonne. It feels amazing, and I'm just ready to get to work.
At just 24 years old, Tatiana August is heading to the House of Commons after clinching one of the closest victories in the history of federal politics.
It's been a roller coaster, we could say. I mean, from winning to then not winning and then to winning again.
It's taken more than a week for Elections Canada to declare her victory, after a validation process had the Bloc ahead. Then a judicial recount found the Liberals had won.
It is amazing. You have an election, about 50,000 people vote, and it comes down to one vote.
August flipped the seat of Terrebonne northeast of Montreal, beating the Bloc Québécois incumbent by a single vote. Born in Haiti, August, who grew up in Montreal, celebrated her victory with her mom on Mother's Day. It's a win that's helping to deliver the Liberals an even stronger mandate.
Mark Carney has indicated, and I think he will, and I think this is now in the Canadian tradition, that he's going to run Parliament as if it's a majority.
Her victory brings the Liberals to 170 seats in the House of Commons, too shy of the 172 needed for a majority government.
I'm thrilled. Finally, somebody Liberal in Terrebonne.
Her win ends a decade of Bloc rule in Terrebonne, as more seats across the province went red in an election that centered around Donald Trump. The results are not what I wanted, said this Bloc supporter. That's democracy. Prime Minister Mark Carney is set to unveil his cabinet Tuesday, and he'll have a sizable Quebec caucus to choose from, which has grown again after this nail-biting win. Colleen?
Touria Izri in Terrebonne, Quebec. Thank you. Prime Minister Mark Carney joined a virtual meeting of the Coalition of the Willing Saturday as Western powers from France and Britain met in Kyiv, calling for a 30-day ceasefire to begin Monday. Not long after they met, the Russian president put up his own offer for direct peace talks with Ukraine to be held in Istanbul on Thursday. Well, now it's unclear if Putin will actually attend. But as Reggie Cecchini reports, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy says he'll be there, waiting for his Russian rival.
A Russian-declared three-day ceasefire ended as it started, with Ukrainian troops fighting back against an enemy that appears unwilling to let up. There is no ceasefire, this wounded soldier said from a field hospital. Shelling continued and explosives dropped, he said. Ukraine's military says it engaged with Russian forces more than 60 times on Sunday, leaving a steady flow of battle-related injuries. Just as Vladimir Putin once again looked for a negotiating table, calling for direct talks with Ukraine's president without preconditions, including a 30-day ceasefire, and asking Turkey to facilitate. Volodymyr Zelenskyy immediately accepted, demanding a ceasefire and telling Putin he'll be waiting for him in Istanbul.
I think there is very little likelihood that even if the meeting were to go ahead, that Vladimir Putin would meaningfully alter his strategy or give up the territory that he is occupying.
While it's unclear if Putin would attend the talks himself, in Kyiv, there's a sense of distrust. Why has Putin proposed it now, this resident asks. Maybe it's to win some time. That is something European leaders say has run out. There can be no negotiations while weapons are speaking, France's president posted to social media one day after he joined other European powers who demanded Putin lay down his weapons or risk new financial penalties.
It's a war. I don't like anything about it, and I'm not happy with that, no.
Donald Trump has made it clear his patience is running thin, and on Sunday claimed if both sides actually meet and a deal isn't possible, Europe and the US will know where everything stands and can proceed accordingly.
Zelenskyy is very much trying to put the front foot back on Vladimir Putin. I think he is trying to show to the U.S. that he's willing to be a partner who adapts to some of those U.S. demands.
While Russia pushes for new talks without a pause, these Ukrainian men defending the front lines have a message for their president, not to engage with Russia until it withdraws. Reggie Cecchini, Global News, Washington.
A fragile ceasefire between India and Pakistan seems to be holding despite the nuclear-armed neighbors pointing blame at each other for violating the truce. People in the disputed Kashmir region surveyed the damage from bombardments that persisted into the U.S.-brokered ceasefire this weekend. Fire from both sides appears to have finally died down, but only after dozens of Indians and Pakistanis were killed in days of fighting. The violence erupted after India launched missile strikes into Pakistan on Wednesday. India claims it targeted militants who carried out a shooting that killed 26 tourists in India-administered Kashmir last month. Israeli strikes pummeled Gaza overnight and again today, killing at least 15 people, mostly women and children, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Two of the strikes hit tents in the southern city of Khan Yunis, where so many displaced Palestinians have sought shelter. Israel's military says it was targeting Hamas militants hiding in densely populated areas. And today, Hamas said it will release Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander in an agreement with the U.S. A dual citizen from New Jersey, Alexander was serving in the Israeli Defense Forces when he was taken captive during the October 7th attacks on southern Israel. Hamas says the release is part of steps being taken to achieve a ceasefire, open crossings, and allow the flow of humanitarian aid. Pope Leo called for peace at the Vatican today as he held his first Sunday address to the Catholic faithful in St. Peter's Square and beyond. In his message, the pontiff called for an end to some of today's biggest international conflicts, particularly in Ukraine and the Middle East. Vincent McAviney reports.
For a brand new pope, another first. Stepping out onto the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica to deliver a Sunday address, he was greeted by thousands cheering. A pause to take in the moment before welcoming them.
Buona domenica!
Dear brothers and sisters, have a good Sunday. Following a week of leaders marking 80 years since the end of World War II in Europe, Pope Leo XIV's inaugural address was aimed at the powerful. In today's dramatic scenario of a Third World War being fought piecemeal, as Pope Francis has repeatedly stated, I too appeal to the great ones of the world, repeating the ever-relevant plea, no more war. Pope Leo praised India and Pakistan for coming to a ceasefire, but singled out two other conflicts troubling him. I carry in my heart the sufferings of the beloved Ukrainian people. Let every effort be made to achieve as soon as possible an authentic, just and lasting peace. May all prisoners be freed and may children return to their families. I am deeply saddened by what is happening in the Gaza Strip. Let the fire cease immediately. Let humanitarian aid be provided to the exhausted civilian population, and may all hostages be freed. His message seemed to resonate with the congregation. I truly hope for those who believe that it is truly a step forward. Peace, peace, peace. What we, the Catholics, hope for, that he brings a lot of love, hope, and ends the wars. Next Sunday, Pope Leo will have the chance to preach his message directly to leaders who'll be attending his official inauguration mass. 1.4 billion Catholics will be praying his words can help stop the drumbeat of war around the globe. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
And a little later in our newscast, our own Jeff Semple sits down with Canada's recently appointed ambassador to the Holy See, former journalist Joyce Napier. In Sri Lanka, at least 21 people are dead and at least 35 others injured after a bus plunged over a cliff. The crash happened in a mountainous area in central Sri Lanka, some 130 kilometers from the capital, Colombo. Officials say more people would have died if it weren't for the help of locals pulling people from the wreckage and rushing them to hospital. There are fresh indications there could be some kind of resolution to the trade dispute between China and the United States.
I'm happy to report that we made substantial progress between the United States and China in these very important trade talks.
That's U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent speaking after 2 days of marathon talks in Geneva with a high-level trade delegation from China. Bessent's boss, President Donald Trump, has imposed triple-digit tariffs on goods from China. Trump did signal last week he is willing to lower import taxes on China. The administration says more details from the talks will be released on Monday. When home no longer feels like home. Coming up, why one American couple took the big leap to move north of the border. And helping Ukrainian mothers who've lost children of all ages to the Russian war. Reports out today that U.S. President Donald Trump may be getting a controversial upgrade to Air Force One and will accept a plane dubbed the Palace in the Sky during an upcoming trip to Qatar. ABC and NBC News report the Qatari royal family will gift the $400 million super luxury aircraft to the Trump administration next week. The Qatari government denies the jet will be donated. It's believed Trump will use this aircraft as his presidential plane until he leaves office in 2029. When U.S. President Donald Trump returned to the Oval Office to begin his second term, he signed a flurry of executive orders designed to reverse policies aimed at protecting LGBTQ2+ rights. Well, the president's push has led to a surge in people from pride communities taking steps to move from the U.S. to Canada. Dan Spector speaks to one American couple about what prompted them to move north of the border.
It's crazy.
American-born Brad Grossberg and Phil Keene have been together for 42 years, almost all of them in the United States. But their plan has become to retire in Canada, and it's all because of Donald Trump.
I just don't want to spend the rest of my life in a country that's going backwards.
During the first Trump administration, the Florida couple started to feel uncomfortable.
Florida is where woke goes to die.
Their state's Don't Say Gay law, books with LGBTQ subject matter being removed from schools.
When you see it start to go backwards, and you fought for it your whole life, it becomes very difficult to comprehend.
They'd spent time in Mont-Tremblant, north of Montreal, and felt welcomed with open arms. They hired an immigration lawyer and after a rigorous 3-year process, managed to become Canadian residents. They now live in Montreal.
I come here and I feel free. I feel like a big hug, and people are kind to us.
Keene and Grossberg are far from alone.
It never could have foreseen that things will get so bad so fast.
Psychologist Dr. Nate Fuchs specializes in helping LGBTQ2S+ immigrants and refugees and says in his Montreal practice there has been a sharp increase in people seeking help after arriving from the USA.
At least twice as many as I used to get before. I get Americans now who are coming here.
He says trans people and gender nonconforming people in particular are arriving with high levels of stress as the Trump administration rejects transgender rights.
It expresses itself as accumulated stress, chronic stress, and quite often manifests itself as hypervigilance, expectation of bad events happening to them.
Keene and Grossberg are appalled by what's happening in their home country since Trump was reelected.
There's part of me that also feels like, in a way, I was run out of Florida, or out of the U.S., and that feels uncomfortable.
They're now working on their French so Keane can get a license to practice architecture here. They feel thankful they had the means to hire an immigration lawyer, pick up and leave, because many members of their community are stuck living in fear south of the border. Dan Spector, Global News, Montreal.
Ahead, Pope Leo's freedom to influence the world in a troubled time. One-on-one with Canada's ambassador to the Holy See. The Vatican may be the world's smallest state, but with 1.4 billion Catholics around the world, it has an oversized influence and reach. The Vatican also has formal diplomatic relations with more than 180 countries, including Canada. Our Jeff Semple spoke with Canada's recently appointed ambassador to the Holy See, former journalist Joyce Napier.
Joyce Napier, Canada's ambassador to the Holy See. Nice to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I mean, this is a historic moment. And I got to say, I'm pretty happy to be here to witness,
Yeah, me too. You've been in this role now for about 10 months.
Yes.
Previously, a journalist, one of us. How's that transition been? How is the job going?
Well, the job is fascinating. I mean, some things that you've acquired as a journalist, you can apply as a diplomat. It's a fascinating world to be the ambassador to the Holy See, because it is a state like no other one. I mean, it's right here behind us, small, like maybe, in the sort of medium neighborhood of Toronto, maybe a small neighborhood of Toronto, but has such an incredible reach across the globe.
Pope Francis took some important steps towards Indigenous reconciliation, including in Canada. What's your hope for the next Pope in that regard?
Well, the next Pope can't undo that. The next Pope cannot undo an apology. He cared about reconciliation very much. He believed that if a wrong was committed, and it was, then, you should ask forgiveness for it. And he did, right? So that will never be erased, right? Nobody can undo that.
We're living in a time of war, old global alliances that seem to be coming apart. What role do you think the church can play at a time like this?
Well, the church had, for instance, has an envoy to the Middle East, had an envoy to Russia and Ukraine. You saw what happened here at Pope Francis's funeral. There was a meeting face-to-face between President Zelenskyy of Ukraine and the U.S. President Donald Trump. So it was important, was organized there on the spot, and it could probably have happened elsewhere, but it was important that it would happen, and so the Vatican made it happen. There are very few leaders right now who have the luxury that a pope has to be able to speak of these things, of what injustices are being committed, because they have no trade deals. They have not the same concerns as any other state. We need a nice voice nowadays. We need the voice of somebody who can, no strings attached, no policy obligations, that can actually point his finger to an injustice and call it what it is. And I think that would be my hope for the church.
Next, supporting Ukrainian mothers who have lost their children during Russia's war. An historic first on the mound in Toronto today. Japanese baseball star Ayami Sato made her debut with the Toronto Maple Leafs, a semi-pro baseball team. She's the first woman to ever start professionally for a men's baseball team in Canada. Sato pitched 2 innings. She threw 1 strikeout and didn't allow a single hit. It's Mother's Day, a day to thank moms for all they do, but for too many Ukrainian women, the ongoing war with Russia has robbed them of their children. Now, as Julia Foy reports, a BC-based foundation is trying to support those bereaved mothers.
As the war in Ukraine drags on into its 4th year, many mothers are suffering from immense grief.
We know that close to 700 civilian children were killed, even the youngest is a couple months old.
The death toll for soldiers continues to climb.
to 80,000 were killed at the front lines.
The Vancouver-based nonprofit Maple Hope Foundation has launched a campaign called Heal the Mother's Heart. The goal is to raise $1 million in the coming months to provide counseling and psychological support for Ukrainian mothers whose children have died in the conflict. A Toronto-based medical team from the Sunnybrook, Ukraine Surgical Education Initiative has just returned from a mission to Ukraine where volunteers saw the devastating human toll firsthand.
There's lots of civilians being affected, family members, friends who have lost children, but even the mothers who lose these soldiers, these are young boys that are, anywhere from 20 and on, and so many of them are lost for useless reasons.
The surgical group, which depends entirely on donations, is planning another 2-week mission to Ukraine in September.
I'm delighted to be home to be able to celebrate Mother's Day with my 2 daughters and as the rest of the team, because no matter what, when you're going into these war zones, you're taking that risk of not knowing what is expected and whether you're going to see your family again.
Support defenders on the front line.
Supporters can buy a scarf or have one sent directly to a Ukrainian mother who has lost a child. A simple gift bringing a little warmth to those who have lost so much.
There is nothing more important than connecting people by personal touch, by healing their wounded hearts with love, kindness, care.
Julia Foy, Global News, Vancouver.
And that is Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Colleen Christie. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Disley, Saskatchewan, the Old Town Hall of Almont, Ontario, and the mountains of Waterton Glacier International Peace Park from Cardston County, Alberta. Thanks for watching and happy Mother's Day.